which has been disability sunflower, and the RNIB, and it's in response to negative perceptions from the public towards people who haven't been social distancing or perceived not to be because they've got a disability. So it might be sight loss or another reason why they can't actually see to maintain social distance. So we've created this visual brand that can be worn, so that if you see it, the idea is that you must think this person either has a disability whereby they're unable to social distance, they might have a health condition, one of the 2.2 million people that has been shielding, or they might be experiencing severe anxiety. And as your previous callers have said, lots of people are going to the shops at the moment.
And they might just not want to have to ask. Because it's not, I had to ask this morning. I was in a coffee shop in a train station just before I came to work, and this guy clearly had just forgotten or didn't care or whatever, and he was right up against my shoulder basically, and there was me and him, only people in the queue, and I just said, with a smile on my face, I just said, which you couldn't see because I was wearing a mask, but the demeanour changes just having a smile, and I said, he was wearing a mask, to his credit, and I said, would you mind just stepping back a little? I said that feels a bit too close to me. And he just went, oh, sorry, and just moved back. But you don't know what reaction you're going to get, do you, when you say that?
No, you don't. And so what we've done is we've got things that people can wear. So you can wear a lanyard, or you can wear a little pin badge, or you can wear a tabard. So you can take it really loud, or you can take it discreetly. But the message means the same. And the great thing about this campaign is that we have developed this great, lovely, friendly animation, which can be shown on large screens. And businesses, we want businesses to join. It's free for businesses to. We are kind of trying to do a public service announcement.
Well, it sounds like a really good idea, and people do need visual cues to remind them, for sure. Thank you very much, Chantal. Let's hear from Joe in Doncaster. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Did you go shopping?
Well, I made to, but I try and avoid it, even in normal times.
But by your wife, not by the government, presumably.
Yeah.
And what do you think the best approach to this should be?
Well, I think for me, it's like all rules and things that have been brought in place have always fallen one step short on everything that we've had. Like, at the minute, there aren't really any restrictions on shopping. I mean, my local supermarket, I was there yesterday, and it was packed. I mean, obviously, nobody ever thinks that it's them breaking the rules, but on the whole, everybody ends up being the one who's too close, if that makes sense. You never see yourself as the problem, but it's the fact that everybody's allowed to, and there aren't any restrictions on it. Like, at the start, there were limiting numbers in shops, and everyone queuing outside and things like that, whereas now, as long as you're wearing a mask, it's a free-for-all.
Yeah, I mean, have you been in a situation where you've left because of the numbers of people or the behaviour of people?
I was rushed through shopping and things like that. Like I said the other day, I was stood in an aisle and there were 10, 15 people in a small shop all crammed into the same aisle. And I just thought, I don't want to be part of this. And then I had coronavirus less than a month ago, so chances are I've got antibodies. I'll be in the situation where by me joining in with it, I'm encouraging other people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't like it in the first place, Joe, which makes that position a lot easier. But no, you're right. I mean, it is all about numbers and what's going on around you, isn't it? If the numbers are manageable and the behaviour is good, is COVID conscious, then you're quit in. You'll be fine.
Are you COVID conscious, John?
Keep your distance from other people, cover your face, and it should be okay. But it's the inability of some people to behave in that way. Thanks for all of your calls. Coming up after the news, let's talk about what happened at the Millwall-Derby game over the weekend.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Bum, bum, bum.
From Global's newsroom at 2 o'clock. The UK says its negotiating team is continuing to work hard to reach a free trade agreement with the European Union. The Prime Minister's official spokesman says they're in the final stages of discussions, and Boris is due to speak on the phone to Ursula von der Leyen this afternoon. One of the key issues Lock is a fisherman in Whitby.
As an island nation, it is our right to control those waters in a sustainable manner and allow access to other nations. We're not saying we don't want anybody in there. Allow access on our terms to obey the rules set up by the UK.
Concerns encourage dose of virus vaccine 3 weeks after the first could be challenging. The Royal College of Nursing says ensuring people come back needs to be factored into the early appointments. The jabs will start being rolled out to over 80s, care home workers and some NHS staff from tomorrow. In Wales, officials say there are a record number of people in hospital with COVID-19. Stricter hospitality rules came in on Friday, including a 6 p.m. curfew for pubs and restaurants. Health Minister Vaughan Gething says a second firebreak lockdown after Christmas can't be ruled out. England's cricket tour of South Africa is over before it had the chance to start. It's been cancelled after reports of positive coronavirus tests in both camps. There are also claims the England team's COVID-safe bubble was compromised. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have been hearing from ambulance workers about how they've been personally affected by the coronavirus crisis. William and Kate met staff from the Scottish Ambulance Service in Newbridge near Edinburgh. It's the first engagement on their whistle-stop tour of England, Scotland and Wales by Royal Train. A silver monolith has been discovered on a beach on the Isle of Wight, just days after similar structures were spotted in the United States and Romania. An anonymous collective called The Most Famous Artist has taken credit for those, but appears not to know who's behind the new British structure. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading at 65.61. That's up 11 points. The pound buys €1.09 and $1.32. The weather, some sunny spells and staying mostly dry across the UK, the odd shower in coastal areas and turning wet and windy over northern and eastern Scotland later. Feeling cold with a high of 6 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Holly Harris.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Sheila Fogarty.
Hello, good afternoon to you if you're just joining us here at LBC. We talk often, don't we, about how human beings are social creatures and we're creatures of sort of willing mimicry as well as we try to fit in with whatever herd we happen to want to fit in with. And you know, we learn that at a very sort of bone marrow level, don't we, as we grow up in a family, that kind of thing, because we want to get along with the people that we're with. Extrapolate that to what happened in the Millwall Derby game at the weekend, and the idea that wanting to fit in, wanting to do what everybody else is doing, wanting to support what everybody else is doing in the environment that you're in gets a bit trickier, doesn't it? And it certainly did on Saturday. I will come to the booing in a moment, but it seems to me that if players, or whatever setting we're talking about, but in this case it's the players, if players, as they did from both sides, choose to take the knee, so to kneel down and to protest against racism and harm to black people, and inequality and injustice against black people, then they absolutely should. You know, clearly each club will have its own policy on those kinds of statements and political statements and statements of protest, and that's for them to work through with the people that they work with. But if they choose to do that, I think that should be respected. If somebody chooses in all good faith not to do it, I think that should be respected too. If somebody boos those doing it, that should not be respected. Not least when, in the case of Millwall and in the case of some elements in football and in society generally, you know that what's coming from it, what it's coming from isn't necessarily a commitment to political freedom or to personal freedom. Some of it's coming from racism. So there are layers to this, and I have to say, I think the Conservative Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly got it right today. He spoke to Nick Ferrari here on LBC, and well, I say got it right. What he said chimed with my own position on this. Ultimately, he said what those fans did was wrong. Hear, say I. He said the footballers clearly wanted to demonstrate solidarity with people who've either been victims of racism or are fighting against racism. I think it's a noble and honourable thing for them to do. He told Nick Ferrari more concrete measures are needed than taking the knee, of course, to tackle racism in sport, and that the act of taking the knee on its own won't do it. I don't think anyone should feel bullied or intimidated into doing something that they don't feel reflects their views. And I agree with him on that. And I would go further and say I don't think that you should be made uncomfortable if you have a different way of expressing solidarity or a different way of wanting to talk about or listen, actually, just as important, to people about racism. And I'm really keen to get your thoughts on this. But let's get a sense of what's going on in the football world since this. Ryan Conway is the Derby will play Millwall weekend. There's been a big response from the Derby interim manager, Wayne Rooney. Ryan, what's he been saying?
Yeah, so Wayne Rooney came out post-game. He had said that it was disappointing to hear the boos, and he had doubled down on his and the club's stance that they were committed to taking a knee prior to every single match they played this season, and that was born out of the conversation they had in pre-season, where the staff, the higher ups, the board, the players all met and made that decision as a collective. To Twitter, on his own personal hand, in football management, there aren't a lot of football managers use it. So to go with what he called a disgraceful act, said he was proud of both sets of players for being able to play on sort of with that lingering in the back of their mind, and always focus and be professional, and not only play a game but entertain those fans that had booed them. So yeah, he then doubled down. Derby will continue to kneel prior to matches.
Tell us about half time. I understand that there was a bit of a sort of impromptu crisis meeting there.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a crisis meeting. I think it was more sort of a rallying cry. Some of the senior players, some of the black senior players particularly, wanted to address what they'd heard. They had told each other that they need to be calm, because in the heat of the moment and when things like that, it is easy to react, and that's when you're the focus of the story, then not what we should be talking about, which is this. And they were a team, and I think team gets thrown around a lot in sport because so much of it is a team game, but they really were a team.
Impressive.
They lifted each other up, not as players but as people.
I understand some of the Millwall players were upset as well. Was the Millwall club statement strong enough?
I don't believe so. Particularly when you look at the Colchester statement that went out, I believe, this morning. That a much more impactful statement. The Millwall one I felt was...
Tell me about the content of that, if you would.
Of the Colchester one?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, so the owner had come out and said that he had a conversation with the players, and it was explained to him perfectly where taking a knee originated from, the civil rights movement, why it was... You don't have to necessarily align yourself with an official Black Lives Matter movement to take a knee, and for it to take a stand against racism. He therefore concluded that anyone that wants to boo equality would not be welcome at his football club, and he would be happy to refund ticket holders.
It's interesting that, because when you say Black Lives Matter, there are two Black Lives Matter notions, aren't well, more than notions. There's the absolute noble and obvious, should be obvious, notion that of course Black Lives matter, or should matter as much as anybody else's life. And then there's the organisation, the movement, Black Lives Matter, capital B, capital L, capital M. And it's that sort of space between the two where the thorns lie, isn't it, really?
Yeah, 100%. People will argue, rightly, by the way, quite rightly, I agree, people will argue that they don't want to support a political movement, they don't want to be affiliated or
particular political movement.
Oh, and this particular one, I think that's the same with things across the board. You know, you can support one thing, but you don't want to be associated with the group that is maybe seen as pushing it, or you see an affiliation with that's fine. But the taking of the knee is only now being reinvented as a Black Lives thing. It was a civil rights thing. It was a Martin Luther King thing. You know, and I think we could all agree that civil rights was a good thing, and taking a knee in peaceful protest was part of that. It wasn't the solution. It was part of that. You can do that. You can take a knee, and you can make it clear that I'm taking this knee the same way Martin Luther King took a knee.
It's a powerful, non-violent statement of intent, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I would say that. And you can do that. And I think the problem, in my opinion, is when a black person, or in the case of some of the pockets of violence, when they do something wrong or something that's negative, when you see the pockets of violence in the protest, then that is seen as all black people, the entire black community, it has done something wrong there. And I think that is generally how it's seen. So therefore, you project that when someone is taking a knee, that they must be supporting Black Lives Matter. There can be no other solution to it, and I disagree with that. They can all do it for their own reasons. Some of the black players might not support it. You don't know that because we don't talk. We just think they must.
And also, black or white, lots of the players, and I had to go and find out, might not know exactly in depth and breadth what Black Lives Matter, the organisation, stands for and campaigns for, beyond the obvious equality for black people. But there's much more politically to it than that, isn't it? Ryan, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Ryan Conway, the Athletics Derby County correspondent. Listening to that was Luther Blissett, former England international and Watford player as well, and equality in football campaigner. Good afternoon to you, Luther. Great to talk to you.
Good afternoon, Sheila. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yes, now you've just recently done a talk on this very topic to a group of Watford fans a week ago. Take me into that room.
Yes, we did. They'd had one or two incidents that came up on their group. It's they do it on.
Are your friends there?
People email.
How do you know?
Talk about it, and
Okay,
it
then.
came up about the actually taking the knee and what.
Where shall I drop you? At Bay Street proper?
Using it to really antagonise everybody else to get people riled up rather than actually find a solution or actually listen to people talking. And I found that
I'll just turn around in here, yeah?
Riled up about things, and they will not just talk
Alright.
about it. They will not just have a conversation which covers whatever that topic may be. And my feeling about the
Here we go.
the taking the knee,
Alright,
I have
John,
no
have a good
issue with
time.
taking the knee and would have done no problem at the beginning of all
See
of
you
this.
later.
It's gone on a long time, and I think it comes to a point where I want to see more than just taking a knee. I want to see what more clubs are willing to do. Because I think what happens at times is that organisations are quite happy, yeah, we're seen to be doing this and we're supporting taking a knee, but what are they doing within their own organisations? Are they putting people of colour or looking to get people
It's
of
all
colour
fucking
into positions
bollocks, isn't it,
of
eh?
management
Take
and
the
leadership
fucking
places
knee.
within
Fucking
businesses, which reflects what society is all about. And you know, that's what took me. And I mean, we're a lot more involved in the conversation we're having now that I had with these people. But they felt comfortable once we started talking to come out with things that they probably wouldn't have done before, because you know people had jumped all over them. So it was a very worthwhile.
What kind of things? Give me an example.
Well, you take it for taking the knee thing, and I was going to say, I don't think we should be taking a knee anymore. And I said, I agree with you, because we need to see more than just action. Yes, if someone chooses to do so, just as what Ryan said, I have no issue, they can do that. But you go, where are we going with this? And what is the next thing? And that's where I was leading the conversation with people. So you cannot just say that's just that alone. You say what's next? Where are we going to take this? Where is it leading? How can we influence change, influence thinking? And I think that is the thing that. Sorry.
No, apologies. You finish your point. Apologies.
No, yeah. So I think that was the thing I was trying to get across to everybody, is that if you want it to stop or you don't want to see it, why do you want it to stop? because you need to be able to explain that to someone, and the other person needs to be able to listen or be willing to listen. But quite often they're not willing to listen because they just think, oh no, you're wrong, whatever. And it's to engage people in conversation, and I think that is the more important thing.
Do you think that the people you spoke to in that meeting know what the organisation Black Lives Matter stands for, above and beyond just the fact that Black Lives?
Yes, a lot of people did, and we spoke about that. And they did, yes. The thing is,
But what did they understand it to mean? Because they, just for people who might not know, they want to destroy capitalism.
The biggest thing that people said, yes, and all that, they said, I do not want to be a part of some political movement because, if I'm a Tory or whatever, that's where I do my vote. I do that in private, and I don't tell anybody what I do. Supporting these people because of the things that they have done, the things that they stand for, and it's not what I stand for.
But it's like the difference, I'm not suggesting it's a terrorist organisation, but it's like the difference between growing up, I grew up in an Irish family, I'm pretty sure my parents would have liked Ireland in their lifetime, but you would never find the actions of the IRA. So it's like, you can have an aim and you can choose the manner in which you seek to reach that aim. And that's the difference, isn't it, between the two, really?
It is. It is absolutely the way it is. You go back to the civil rights movement in a way that was non-violent, and you understand. But no, the other side of it is, which I don't find the correct thing to do, is when players have raised their fist in the air, because I think that takes it into somewhere completely different again.
You don't like that one?
No, I'm not a big fan of that, because the way I look at it is a little bit like the swastika itself. The swastika, in its original form, was not, the Nazi Party didn't start it, they adopted it, but it's actually a healing symbol. And, it's one of those things.
Not anymore. May Luther, thank you. It's really good to talk to you and get your perspective, not least because of those conversations you've been having.
I'm a
very recently
Maltese
with a group of
person.
football fans,
I'm always in the wrong
in your
lane,
case.
chap.
And thanks again to Ryan Conway, who's the Athletics Derby County correspondent, Luther, an ex-England and Watford footballer. Your calls in a moment on this. Your impressions really of what's gone on over the weekend, and your own sense of whether you would take the knee for Black Lives Matter, for the fact that Black Lives Matter. It's 2:17.
This is LBC.
If you're looking for advice and tips on the big consumer issues, the place to be is the LBC Consumer Hour, every Friday from 9 p.m.
You're listening to the LBC Consumer Hour with me, lawyer Dean Dunham.
Good evening, Dean. Thank you ever so much for taking my call. Good evening. Thanks for taking the call.
How can I help?
Join Dean Dunham for the LBC Consumer Hour, every Friday evening from 9 with Which, the UK's consumer champion. Shop smarter with expert tips and advice. 2020. It's certainly not been an easy year, but as it draws to a close, let's try to make this Christmas the best it can be. You can start by shutting cyber criminals out. Before you head online to do your gift shopping, visit cyberaware.gov.uk for some practical steps to help protect you from cybercrime. From creating stronger passwords, enjoy a Merry Christmas. Global Player is the official Morris. Salso Prosecco is now $4.99 a bottle. Morrison's, making Christmas special. Majority stores are online, subject to availability. Was £6.75 centilitres. Please drink responsibly. This is the sound of confidence being made in the British Army. Did you catch that? The sound of footsteps as the sound of confidence that lasts a lifetime being made. Jobs.
Heroes. They're the ones we turn to in our darkest hour. Like when you blow a fuse and the lights go off. From electric state, plumbing to plastering, and local homes, every job completed by an expert tradesperson comes with a 12-month British Gas guarantee when you pay the bill. So if it needs fixing,
rich spice fruits. We'll give back to your local community. We can all do our bit this Christmas. Co-op is what we do. 2p for every pound spent goes to communities. T's and C's apply. Visit co-op.co.uk/membership.
Hey, Ria, what's it like being the boss?
So many decisions to make, Kev.
Like whether to switch to EE's business full works plan for iPhone?
That was an easy one. I mean, the unlimited data's a must-have. And I get to watch Apple TV Plus when it's time to unwind.
I bet you love bopping along to Apple Music, too.
I've got some moves.
Oh, yeah? Like this, you mean?
Not at that time, Kev.
Get EE's business works plan for iPhone.
Buzzer set aside, the TV goes off, the family comes together, and everything stops. For the perfect roast, only Bisto Best Gravy will do. Made with real meat juices for that authentic, rich roasted flavour. Bisto.
This is LBC with Sheila Fogarty.
Well, Richard has called from Manchester to talk about this question of taking the knee at football games, or this sense of pressure as well, of feeling pressurised to do so. Richard, hello.
Hi, good afternoon, Sheila. Thank you for taking my call. When George Floyd was murdered, I think he was absolutely, was very supportive of, and still am, but with certain caveats, of the I think I'm taking the knee not in a political sense with the raised fist, but taking the knee as most people understand it to be. I think it.
Well, people don't raise their fist when they take the knee, do they?
Some do. Some players are seen with their fist clenched, which has a more symbolic meaning politically. But anyway. Taking the knee, I was fully supportive of. Would I take the knee? Yes, I would take the knee. But I think it needs to have an end station, and I think it needs to come to an end at the end of this year.
Why? Why?
Why? Because it is too specific. If it's meant to be representative of against racism, then it's not being interpreted that way. It's very.
By whom? By whom?
I think anybody.
Well, no, it's being
racism is a bad thing.
It's being interpreted by me as against racism. Standard, the organisation Black Lives Matter. How this message, how this gesture lands, how this protest lands in some instances. But to me, it means Black Lives Matter, and I am taking the time with this in this public forum to say so silently. That's what it means to me every time I see it.
Well, then, sorry, but I don't agree with you on that. I think the way it is perceived is in the narrowest sense that it is.
Well, not by everybody, Richard, because I've just told you, not by me, and clearly not by every fan in that ground, and clearly not by every footballer in that ground.
I would suggest that most people see that as a direct correlation to George Floyd and as an act of Black Lives Matter. Quite rightly so. I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying it should be now more open as an anti-racist thing, and I don't think it's being interpreted generally and broadly.
How might that, if the thing is to continue, the kneeling is to continue, how might you change that, do you think? Is it possible to change that? Because of course it didn't begin with George Floyd, did it?
Well, no, of course it didn't begin with George Floyd. So how, for example, would someone see taking the knee as an act against hissing that takes place when Tottenham Hotspur plays opponents? How would that be interpreted by that taking the knee?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Well, you're saying that it has the broadest general impact, and I'm saying if that is the case, then explain to me.
Oh no, sorry. Okay, are you talking about anti-Semitism now?
I'm talking about all forms of racism.
All right. Well, I'm not. I'm not. I'm. So, good question. Now I understand what your question is. Just to be clear, I see it in relation to racism against black people.
Right. Well, then we're on the same page. And I'm saying that that's great and appropriate, but it needs to broaden out now And I think the taking the knee comes to an end. And I would also say, you mentioned earlier on that, some people, if they don't want to take the knee, that's their right and their freedom to do so. But boy, that is really ignoring peer pressure. And I think that would cause an incredible difficulty for a player who feels that, I don't want to do it anymore, or I want to do it in a different way.
Yeah, but it needs supporting, doesn't it? That choice needs supporting by the teammates and the club. If somebody doesn't wish to, for maybe huge political discomfort with the organisation Black Lives Matter, whatever reason, then that I do think that should be respected as well. But the reason going back to your original point that it needs to stop or change, the reason I disagree with you is and I've got Hillsborough in mind here, for easily 12, probably 15 of the 27 year wait before the rest of the world caught up with the truth on Hillsborough. A relatively small group of people connected to the story very directly stuck with the central message and never left it. Justice for the 96. And in the reams and reams of reports and in the accusations that were levelled at fans for being mopey, tearful victims, and in all of the full, I won't go into all the detail again because we've all rehearsed it 1,000 times, but all that horror and that ignorance and that antipathy towards those families and that group and the fans, and they just stuck with justice for the 96, justice for the 96, justice for the 96. And in all the verbiage and all the lying, that is what stands and that is what stood. And that's why I don't think this particular protest needs to be watered down.
Can I respond to that?
Of course.
Yeah, no, so I'm not suggesting that the fight against Black Lives in any way should be watered down. Quite the contrary, I think we should distill the fight against all forms of racism. I think it's understandable and right that it's been very specific post George Floyd and the need and the emotional intensity and everything else to focus on Black lives. But now I think it needs to broaden out because there's a lot of bad stuff that's happening to a lot of different minorities in addition to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, well, we're not going to agree, Richard. We're not going to agree. Some things are about what they are about, but that's fine. We don't need to agree. Richard in Manchester, thank you. I've just been sent a picture of the England, or some of the England rugby team taking the knee, and 1, 2, 3, I think, individuals not doing so. And I don't remember there being a great uproar because of it, unless I missed that. Let's hear from A2 in Nuneaton. Hello, A2.
Hello. I think to the point that was being raised, that some people are saying that it needs to stop at a certain point. The reason why I disagree with that is that I think you articulated that as well. As soon as that stops, everybody forgets about it and everybody moves on. It's important we distinguish the political side of Black Lives Matter from the social injustice people are trying to fight for. Mm-hmm. And this has to keep going. Because even myself as a black person, there was a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of things I didn't realize. And it was just with COVID and this Black Lives Matter coming out that I did a lot of research and I started finding out a lot of things that are happening. So it's important we talk about it. It's important we educate both sides of the debate. And until the debate is had, and until people come to understand that racism is not acceptable in any form, and there are so many different types of racism that happen. And
in a way, to support what Richard was aiming at, yeah. I think, in a way, if a conversation about racism against black people goes where it should, if you see what I mean, as in becomes a full conversation, an authentic and full conversation, inevitably, I would imagine, other forms of racism will become part of that conversation organically, without even trying.
Exactly. So I think you make that point very clearly, because there's so many other things that if it doesn't affect you, don't realize. And until we speak about it, people don't know that this is what's happening. So we stop when racism stops. Is racism going to stop? No. But if we keep talking about it, if we keep educating each other, there's lessons to be learned from both sides. But until we talk about it and understand each other, we're not going to get anywhere. And these things are going to keep happening, and we're just going to, somebody dies, everybody comes out, and then we move on again. And then the same thing happens in a couple of years' time. We all come out, talk about it.
There you have it, Pork and Rabbit, Freeman, Hardy and Willis.